Hi everyone, it's Raina, and this is a video for those people who have their sun in Leo and their rising sign is Scorpio. First and foremost, we're talking about fire and water energy. And one thing that fire and water have in common is being emotional. Fire is a masculine element, and it is more about being passionate in life, passionate about one's beliefs, and the water element is more about the personal experiences and the emotional connection to those experiences. So, this type of person is going to tend to be romantic and, I would say like a visionary, creative for sure. Creativity is associated with both fire and water in terms of the elements. And both of these signs have in common that they are fixed signs. So in astrology, the signs of Leo and Scorpio square off. And this means that it's a hard angle. Now, you would have to look at your particular chart to see if this is true for you. I recommend astro.com. It's a free service. There are other free services, but this one provides an aspects table, and I feel like it's the easiest that I have found to read the information. And it has to be within certain degrees to be an official square. But these signs are signs that are known to square off. And a square is a frustrating angle. It means that in this particular case, with the sun and rising sign squaring off, it means that the person can experience a frustration in getting across who they really are based on how other people perceive them, at least initially, because I'm sure most people have had the experience of first impressions not being the truth about that person. And really the rising sign is more of the first impressions. And if you know somebody very superficially, you may always stay in that shallow perception. But if you spend more time with somebody, you get to see more sides of them. And really, with the rising sign, I think a lot of defense mechanisms can crop up. And I don't necessarily think that these ever leave a person. They may dissipate as a person gets older and they grow into their sun sign, because that's what you want to do. Your sun sign is the central influence of your astrological makeup. And this is why when we say, hey, baby, what's your sign? We're not talking about the rising sign, we're talking about the sun sign. And it's going to be, if you ever want to know anything about somebody, but you can only learn one thing, you wouldn't ask for the rising sign, you'd ask for the sun sign, because it's going to contain the essence of this person's incarnation, but not their true nature, because that transcends this lifetime and this, whatever your birthday is. But anyway, and by the way, the rising sign is dependent on your time of birth. And this is why the natal chart, which the rising sign is the anchor of, being the cusp of the first house, it can be really good for mundane astrology, in the sense of, well, mundane astrology is the world predictions, but I mean everyday events in your life, because this is capturing when you came into this world, the time of birth. So, in any case, I think that this combination can be quite intimidating, to be honest with you. And that can be a bit helpful sometimes when you are trying to assert yourself, because people may give in to you. I was going to say almost out of fear, but it's really because they sense that you're not to be messed with in a way. Scorpio, as the demeanor, is very intense. I know that's a cliche saying that about Scorpio, but I haven't found a better word. But sometimes somebody might say it's kind of heavy, the aura or the vibe that people get. They sense that there's a lot going on beneath the surface. The surface may be a poker face, but it's like still waters run deep. But I don't feel that it's necessarily still waters, because Leo is a very self-expressive sign, so it doesn't tend to be very um, restrained. Leo is the natural ham. But one thing I can say about this is that even though the sun is in Leo, when you have Scorpio rising, it may subdue that Leo influence. Another person who is trying to guess your sun sign may be quite confounded, because Scorpio rising can be quite mysterious. And that would probably be the one of the clues that the person, you might be able to guess the rising sign more than the sun sign, in other words, because there are some telltale signs of Scorpio rising. You may just give off a very I was going to say Black Moon and Lilith vibe, kind of, that you seem like a sultry appearance. Even if you're blonde, you may have that kind of, you may seem like you are naturally, people may say, I bet you that person is a natural brunette, that they're not a true blonde. Well, of course, that's not always going to be true. But it's very interesting, because I don't know if it was when I did a video on Scorpio rising, I think I mentioned that even somebody who's fair skinned and blonde may feel like an urge to dye their hair black, and sometimes it happens. You usually think that people, regardless of skin tone or whether or not it looks good, regardless of race or ethnicity, there are always people who dye their hair blonde. It seems like that is the go-to when you dye your hair, is you dye it blonde. But there are people who have blonde hair who dye it black. And I bet you that a large percentage of those have Scorpio rising. I could be wrong, or Pluto in conjunction with the ascendant. And you may dress in dark colors, not necessarily just black, but maroon, or anything that has this dramatic tone to it that is very powerful. And being powerful is definitely something that you may be. There's always a reserve, and a kind of like, I would call it a mistrust or distrust that this rising sign may have towards others. So that's part of the thing where you may kind of be rather tight-lipped. I was going to say aloof, but it's not really the same as somebody who's like an Aquarius, where it's very detached, because Scorpio is the exact opposite of detachment. But the aloof quality is coupled with this simmering kind of, like, these roiling emotions that are, uh, you know, underlying within the person. Other people may sense it, because sometimes you just sense somebody's energy. But this can come from trauma in childhood. I look to the rising sign as really being indicative of the childhood environment or influence. And depending on the difference between the sun and rising sign, if it is like a hard angle or a strange angle like the inconjunction, I have the inconjunction, my sun is in Sagittarius, and my rising sign is Taurus. You can feel like a black sheep energy where you feel very different from other members of the family. And in those cases, there can be a lot of um, I would say in this particular situation, there could be a frustration uh, about not being about being misunderstood, mischaracterized by others. But in some cases, it's not so much that; it's just an inconsistency in how the person really is and how they project themselves, and that, in part, or as a consequence of that, they may um, create problems with other people because other people can't figure them out. And I certainly had that situation. I felt like I have had that situation my whole life, but especially before my first Saturn return when I was really trying to project more of the Taurus energy. Now, in this case, you may feel that clash between who you want to be and who you maybe are acting like, more of that Scorpio energy, because Leo is very generous, much more open. Fire is, very expansive. There's an anal retentive quality I feel to Scorpio because I think Scorpio is connected to the first chakra or the eliminatory, is it eliminative or eliminatory organs? Um, And because of that, it could be the second chakra, but I think it's the first chakra because I think it has to do with, survival and things like that. And that can lead to a person who is very um, trying to keep their own counsel, not necessarily trusting other people and sharing with them their own uh, things. Because there might be like this tendency to see other people as potential enemies and that you have to guard against sharing too much information. So there might be that thing going on where you want to be open but you just kind of keep a certain aspect of yourself mysterious, and you feel it's like an attempt to feel more in control and powerful. Another thing about this is that this can be quite of a desire to be in that position of power. Um, Leo is associated with leadership, and the Scorpio energy is about with through Pluto, but even Mars is very ambitious. Um, really respects powerful people, so it makes sense that you would want to be um, in that place or in that space. The problem is that what can happen, first of all, if you are in a position of leadership, that you have to be careful not to abuse your power because somebody with this combination may have come from a background of trauma. And so going after situations where you are in charge may be to feel safe, may be to feel so nobody is controlling you, but then you could do what was done to you, which is controlling others. And the late Wayne Dyer called this the petty tyrant. And the dark side of Leo, or the shadow side of Leo, is that kind of controlling figure who it's like, I think Napoleon was a Leo. I think there have been Mussolini, maybe. There have been some famous tyrants that were Leos, and that kind of the same warm, benevolent energy can easily go the other direction if there is an imbalance. And so, since the rising sign can be your persona, these two are clashing, and also the influences from the past can lead the Leo person to feel that they are vulnerable in life and they have to shore up their power. And unfortunately, sometimes that can be in a heavy handed way. And also with the Scorpio influence, being paranoid about other people's intentions or possible motives. And that can lead to kind of like that ninth dimensional chess player, which is really being Machiavellian. And so, another key thing in professional life can be the person who isn't in that position of power but is striving to get there. This could be, um, I was going to say the coworker from hell, but I don't want to just make this all just completely negative. I'm just saying that you have to be really, really aware of the things that you're doing and doing things intentionally, because sometimes people kind of are on automatic based on their conditioning, and then they um, get involved in situations. They may not be even trying to do anything that is destructive, but they find it very hard to be detached from situations, again, because these are both emotional signs. And actually, I have seen other types of Leo, Scorpio squares in the chart, like, for instance, the moon and Mars or the sun and Mars. And this can be very problematic for the person in terms of their personality. And I would say that this could arise for this combination with the rising sign as well. This could be the woman who's a femme fatale, because, and I feel like Leo is even more sexual than Scorpio, even though Scorpio has that reputation. I feel that Scorpio is takes sex very seriously, but is not necessarily um, indiscriminate about having sex. And I feel like Leo, because Leo rules the fifth house, and that's the house of pleasure, and recreational sex is connected to that. That Leo may have a much more open-ended attitude towards that. And as a woman, in particular, because women have been conditioned to be, these, sexy, especially for men, not necessarily for other women, but for men, that a woman who feels disempowered, a Leo woman who is either trying to get ahead or feels disempowered, may utilize her sex appeal in that Machiavellian way. And, like we talk about the casting couch, or it's like by any means necessary. And it's interesting because your rising sign tells you who your rulers are. And for this combination, because Scorpio's on the ascendant, the rulers are Mars and Pluto. And Pluto is the lord of the underworld. So sometimes uh, there might be by any means necessary attitude about what that person is doing. And so that might even include getting ahead. And Pluto can also be about sex. Mars is the sex drive, so that can also be the case. That's probably another reason why Scorpio is associated with it. And so, if Leo, also for the ego, wanting to be the person with the greatest sex appeal. But I feel like the rising sign can be used as leverage. And it's not just about being pretty or handsome. It's about, this could be about seduction. This is the seductress, this rising sign of Scorpio. And the Leo person might derive a sense of ego gratification of being the hottest woman in the room, the one that all the men want or all the women want. Everybody wants this person. So because why is it? Because it's a sense of power. It's almost like casting a spell, the Black Widow spider. And if the person plays with this concept and has fun with it, they can just appreciate it, for a short time in their life, maybe when they're young, in their 20s and single, and they can just enjoy having that all eyes on them, the Leo type of person, but they don't take it seriously and they don't build their identity around it. I don't think there's anything really wrong with that. The problem is when they are trying to leverage it to get things in their life and it becomes a form of manipulation. And this is kind of where Scorpio can excel, because the person with Scorpio rising can have an astute understanding of human nature. And if they are unscrupulous, they can use it as a weapon against other people to manipulate them, to get their needs met. But it's an underhanded kind of a thing, because it's not, it's a psychological operations in a sense. So, not using sexuality as a weapon, not using um, intimidation as a weapon. The Scorpio rising can have the penetrative glance, or those, even maybe even kind of a hypnotizing eyes. I think of all the signs, Scorpio is the master hypnotist, because they just the power of suggestion. And this may show up even in the physical appearance. Not using these things in a negative way, but there are times when it can be a benefit and it's not anything manipulative. It's having confidence, having that power, that inner power, though, not trying to grasp outer power that is an inferior type of power and that's actually destructive to other people. And if somebody is that good leader that has this combination, they will be respected by others. They won't be feared. Being feared is not being respected. So if the person is a parent, and a lot of Leos are connected to children, they want to be a parent that is learning from the mistakes that were done to them growing up. They don't want to repeat them, just so they can have that sense of power over somebody else. And this can be a parent that can really help their child at a deep level, because really Scorpio and the eighth house that Scorpio rules represents transformation. So it's like the shaman. The shaman is a healer, and the shaman can help um, transform lives. So with that sun in Leo, this can be a great combination for a life coach. This is an amazing combination for a life coach because there's that real backbone or foundation in healing and transformation, coupled with this desire to be the best version of themselves. Fire signs are very much into self improvement because they're into expansion. Expansion means growth. And growth means, I've heard the expression like growth junkie, meaning like, people going to all kinds of seminars and reading all kinds of self help books because they just want to better themselves. If somebody comes to that kind of self help, um, those self help materials with a sense of self loathing, then that is not positive motivation. We want to do things so that we can um, advance ourselves, so that we keep growing, and that is actually a very healthy desire. It's not about fixing ourselves. It's about growing ourselves, and just it's like a refinement process. And I think that is also kind of like what Scorpio represents in the eighth house is the alchemical process. So this could be a very good combination for that kind of person. So really look at how you interact with other people, especially people that you don't know very well. And do you tend to kind of be a little bit obscure? And there's nothing wrong. You don't have to like tell your life story when you first meet other people. But look to see if you have any of these withholding traits, because it could be coming from past experiences that made you feel like exposed if you mentioned too much of what was going on. Scorpios might learn that keeping secrets is part of life, and maybe if they come from dysfunctional families, that can just be par for the course. But it's not. It's not um, a lesson learned, a healthy lesson learned. So you don't want to keep going with that and thinking that that's going to advance your cause, in other words. And you will find, especially if you do actually have a square with these two placements, is that you can overcome the obstacle of that square through conscious self-awareness. That's probably a redundancy, right? But anyway, that's what I have for you, and I hope that this resonated. If you would like a private reading, the link is below. Take care. Bye.